Hey, welcome to Framework. It's Indiana Jones Day. Hi, I'm John. I'm one of the hosts of Framework. Al Schwartz, the other host of Framework, is, I'm afraid, not present today. He is,
he's sick.
A surly elder statesman who is refusing the call to adventure, I'm afraid. No, he has, he just moved and he has a new kid. So he hasn't had a chance to see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny in theaters now. So I have two guests, two returning champions, here to talk about one of the summer's films, Indiana Jones, and that is Brett Blake. Welcome, Brett.
Happy to be here.
And David Sarnecki. Welcome back to the show.
This movie isn't the first time Indiana Jones has survived a massive bomb.
Yeah, that's well said. A massive bomb, as most films this summer are. Is that right? Yeah.
Very interesting.
There's a lot of underperformance happening. Yeah.
Do you think that's, not to turn this into a box office podcast, but is that because the movies themselves are lacking, or is it because no one wants to go to the theaters anymore? And we learned how not to do it during the pandemic.
It's hard to say, isn't it?
I don't think it's that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's quite as simple as no one wants to go anymore. Because again, we had one of the biggest movies of all time last summer with Top Gun Maverick.
Right.
Mario performed very well in the springtime. There've been a few modest hits. Guardians did pretty well internationally. Spider-Verse has done much better actually than I thought it would have based on the first movie's box office. It surpassed that quite easily. I think it's just there's a lot of product out there, if we're going to use that word, that the quality of which the audience is deeming to be somewhat suspect, and therefore they are treating their movie-going dollar a little bit more preciously than they might have in the past. And some of that might be still, after the pandemic, it's in a mindset of, you need to convince me to go see this movie. Like, I need to be fully convinced. And if the marketing doesn't cut it, or if just the premise is not doing it alone, I think a lot of people are content to wait for, the equivalent of home video at this point.
Yeah, I guess so.
Boy, I bet Disney really regrets taking this thing to the festivals about a month ago
that too,
or so.
Specifically for
that was a big cell phone. That was that didn't go well for them. Although I don't know that it mattered much in the long run. I think people just are over this guy. I think this is a movie character for young Gen X and old millennials. I believe young people don't give a shit about Indiana Jones.
Man,
sadly enough.
That's possible. I also think, again, we're coming off of the least liked movie prior to this as well.
Very much so.
So
yeah, that always, like, when's the last time that the apology movie has been a huge hit after the last one sucked, right?
That's true. But it is the end of the line. It seems like they're not making another one of these things after the performance that is given, and just the film itself is pretty distinctly a finale, an ending of sorts.
You don't think they'll recast at some point down the line?
I think they might. I think that these grosses probably took the wind out of those sails for at least a decade.
Yeah, for a little while at least.
You never know. Who knows? Maybe 3 years from now, we're welcoming our new. I think Spielberg and Ford might have to be gone for that to happen. But that will happen one day. They're both old men. It belongs to Disney. They didn't get it to do nothing with it. Although it sounds like, from what I've been reading, the only reason this one got made was it was a contingent part of the Harrison Ford being in Force Awakens. Yeah. So who knows? I mean, it's valuable IP. I'm sure it's not gone for good. But okay, before we get into the Dial of Destiny, let's go around the horn here. What is your relationship with this series? Personally speaking, if there is anything I'm a big fan of, it's probably these movies. Like this is what I'm a big fanboy dork for. The first three in particular are a huge part of my childhood. I have strong memories associated with them. Nothing makes me feel 10 years old again quite as much as The Last Crusade. It's a film that, all three of them really, that I've seen more times than I could possibly count, and know them by heart. And huge inspiration just on my life. Oddly enough, it's just how I process cinema, and probably in some ways, it comes from these movies. King of the Crystal Skull. it's not a good movie. I like it more than a lot of people. I think I'm like not upset by it, and so that makes me one of its defenders. So that's where I stand. Brett, what is your relationship with it?
Pretty straightforward. I think Raiders is easily in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. I think it's probably the greatest adventure movie ever made.
Yeah.
Temple of Doom, I think, is kind of Spielberg at the very height of his powers, just totally unleashed. The last third of that movie is just an incredible series of action, spectacular beats that he has never matched again. And I love it for that. Yeah. And Last Crusade, I'm also a huge fan of. I think it's like the warmer, cozier cousin of Temple of Doom, which is a little bit obviously darker, a little bit harder edged, a little meaner. Love Connery in that movie. Love the chemistry he and Ford have. It's just a really good sort of comfort film. So those 3 to me are pretty close to a perfect trilogy. Like I love all 3 of them. Yeah. Crystal Skull, I think, is slightly overhated. I think it's in contention for Spielberg's worst movie because I think you can just sense his complete disinterest throughout. And that's a shame. I don't like the way it looks visually. I think there's questionable use of CGI, which might sort of foreshadow things we may talk about in terms of Dial of Destiny. But I do not think it is like some, childhood memory erasing or scarring event. I think there is some good stuff in Crystal Skull, but it's ultimately just a large missed opportunity.
Missed opportunities, yeah. Yeah, that sums it up pretty good. But David, how do you fall?
Yeah, missed opportunity might be my word of the day, Pee-wee style here. It's no secret that all 3 of us are super fans, right? We love these movies to death, the original trilogy. We're talking the Belloc for crying out loud. I mean,
yeah,
come on. Yeah. That being said, I think that love is why I really struggle with Kingdom and Dial more than is necessarily called for,
Yeah.
Just to jump to the meat of it, Dial of Destiny is okay for me. It's like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. It's fine, and I think that's why I kind of hate it a little bit.
I understand that.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's kind of unreasonable, but at the same time, it's Indiana Jones on the marquee. It stars Harrison Ford. When it does that, suddenly the movie opens itself up to a very specific set of standards for me, right? And
yeah,
well, I think that the movie struggles to meet those. If it said The Mummy 4 or National Treasure 3 on the poster, I'd probably have enjoyed this well enough and never thought about it again.
Interesting,
but it doesn't. So I'm looking at it through a pretty critical eye.
We demand something a little bit more from Indiana Jones.
Which I think that's fair.
That's fair, right?
I mean, the first 3 movies are some of the best movies anyone's made of this type. I mean, maybe the best, when it comes to what I expect out of a summer popcorn adventure film, which makes up most of the movies that come out, not just in the summer, but like all the time. They are the gold standard. They all offer something a little different. They're all delightful. They're all perfect in their own way. Even Temple of Doom, flaws and all, is just has some of the greatest action scenes ever committed to film. Like the last 45 minutes of that movie are maybe the best last 45 minutes of any movie.
It's so
it
great.
Is a high standard. And I think that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I think if you want to ask why that movie is loathed and detested, it's because it doesn't come close to matching that, which, a high bar to clear, sure. And if you ask why I think Dial of Destiny is being, greeted with a little bit more, well, people don't hate it. I guess some people do, but it's not. I'm seeing people enjoying this movie, and I think that's because they've already seen Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. If this was the 4th indie movie, I think people would be pretty pissed.
Probably,
yeah. I mean, some are.
Well, people are very pissed about Helena. Boy, are they mad!
They sure are.
They are mad about this.
I don't understand.
Now?
I kind of get it, but
yeah, I get it completely. The Helena character is designed as, frankly, she's an asshole. She's a jerk. She's a really mean character, but it's almost as if people don't realize that that's intentionally the case.
Yeah.
And they're like outraged, like she's she's awful. It's like, yeah, they wrote her that way. That's clearly the little, I don't know.
When it gets to like, how dare she not be deferential to Dr. Jones?
Then I'm like, she?
It is structurally what they're going for. I like this performance. I think she's good. I wish she had funnier dialogue. I wish everyone had funnier dialogue. I would say, I think Helena works a lot, kind of. I think she's very good. I think just like Mads Mikkelsen, a very good addition. I kind of like the new cast a lot. The little kid I don't give a shit about. I don't think he adds anything, except for that one incredible murder he commits. Other than that, I don't care about him.
That is one of the things I really did. The new kid stinks. Okay,
no.
He's the most bland, boring nothing of a short round from Disney.
But it could be
nothing.
So much worse.
He's nothing, but he could be much worse.
He could be the kid from The Mummy Returns.
Yeah,
right.
It could be.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And he does murder the shit out of that guy, which I really liked.
How lucky that he had a little child-sized grate just waiting for him. That was really worked out well.
What a wild thing to include. Like, that's the meanest kill in the film for sure. And it's just, It feels like it's out of the blue. And it feels like the kid is plotting it, even though he can't possibly be.
Yeah, he hasn't. There's no way he knew. Yeah. So it's just, well, that was lucky.
Quick-witted. He's clever. That's because he's an indie sidekick.
So a lot of people seem to be coming out of this. I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of people seem to be thinking that the opening 30 minutes or so, the young indie prologue, is the best part of the movie. Would you guys agree with that?
No.
I like it. Okay.
No.
I think it's the best action scene in the movie.
Okay.
I don't even think I would go that far. I think I like the idea of it.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't think the technology is there to fully pull it off, and I think it's too long.
Yeah.
I think it's a solid 22, 23 minutes, and I think it should have been 10 to 12.
I have no eye for that technology.
I agree with that.
I have no eye for spotting bad tech on CGI de-aging.
I envy you.
Oh, you could. It wasn't bothering you every
no.
Half the time it looked okay, but half the time it was like, oh, rubbery. Oh, I don't want to see
the
this.
The old voice that was coming out of his mouth was the only thing I was like, he can't hide that old voice, But this was not an Irishman situation. They clearly had young people doing the stunts, so that helps for me. I mean, I always miss CGI, even in this film, which definitely has CGI. It's not something that bothers me too much. I just wish the sequences themselves were more exciting.
It bothers me.
Too much CG. It bothers me. Yeah. It's every single the tuk chase, as it's called, the centerpiece of the movie, action wise. It's just the whole thing is just kind of dragged down because there's too many moments where it's like, oh, that didn't look so great.
Okay. This actually brings up
even the CGI equivalent of the rear projection is just
less good.
Right.
Less good.
So jumps out at me now. And I can't unsee it a lot of the time.
The action in this is my biggest problem with the film. This is why I think it does not work totally, is because it's what we were talking about. You go to an Indiana Jones movie for exemplary action, like the best it's been done. I think that's the thing all three of those movies have. The original, it's some of the best action scenes ever committed to film, without question. They are exceptional. Nothing in Dial of Destiny action-wise is exceptional. It is functional. I don't think there's a bad action scene in this movie. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull has bad ones, but this one has solid, okay, adequate ones.
If I say a minecart chase, immediately your mind is just like overwhelmed, and then I say a tank scene, immediately you're thinking of him hanging off the side. Oh my god, so exciting! What are you going to say about, like, what's the one at Dial that pops out at you?
Well, I like the train one best, but it's none of them are great. None of them are all-timers. That's for sure. And I think
that's a problem. I said,
the number one problem for me, I think that an Indiana Jones movie needs to be exciting and have great action scenes. That's like the number one thing it needs to do more than anything. Maybe
it limped across the finish line in that way, which is I guess it's okay. It's good enough. but not for me, not for this movie.
It's adequate.
That you didn't have to make.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I do like sort of conceptually the idea behind a lot of these sequences. Like I like the idea of a horseback chase through an urban setting. Like that's a cool idea for an Indiana Jones set piece. I like the idea of having to go down, into the ocean, into a shipwreck.
That I liked.
We haven't seen that in an Indiana
scene,
Jones
but
movie.
I liked it.
No, but I mean, there's
eels.
Yeah.
Oh,
it feels like a set piece.
Mm-hmm. Those eels need to eat somebody.
They should have.
Yeah, it was kind of. They just kind of showed up and then they went away, and I was like, "Ooh, that was scary." All right, anyway.
I don't know if we want to. I don't know if we want to.
The same
jump
with the
into
centipedes.
Well, that was just. That was like a. Hey, remember centipedes?
Yeah, we need bugs.
The eels filled that role. They are the creepy crawlies of this movie. Is the eels? It goes snakes, bugs, rats. What's next? Eels. Well, there's ants. There's ants in there. Yeah.
Sure.
The thing about the bugs here, though, is like all that jumped out at me is like, hey, remember when they used to use real bugs? Remember when this stuff used to actually be real
bugs, man?
Yeah.
There's some real stuff in Temple of Doom.
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded if they threw bugs on them. That's for sure. I don't know. Again, I don't notice. I'm always just like, oh, it's bugs. Look at those crazy bugs. And of course, I guess it's CGI, but I don't know. I forget. I don't know. That's something that, unless it's egregious, does not really jump out at me ever. So maybe that's why I'm
lucky you.
I'm much more positive on this than you guys, I think, or somewhat more positive. I'm just saying why I don't think it worked. But I don't think any of them are bad. I think all the action is functional.
Sure.
It's your average Marvel movie, which is not, that sounds damning, but I don't mean it that way. Okay, forget the Marvel. It's your average movie. It's your average, it's Fast and Furious with sort of a crypt scene in it. It's what you would expect from any film released at this time of the year. And that's not good enough.
That's depressing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not fair. It's not, well, maybe it is fair.
It's an Indiana Jones movie, yeah.
The last couple of days, I can't get Fury Road out of my head. The chase scenes and how good they are, how practical and exciting. And Fury Road is one of the best movies ever made, so it's not necessarily fair to say, why can't you do that? It's
sure. I mean, that's
not the easiest thing to do, but once again, it's Indiana Jones, man.
No, I mean, Fury Road is probably the closest anyone's come to an Indiana Jones movie this decade in the last 10 years.
Oh, right? Yeah.
I mean, is it 10 years old now? It might be older than that, but it's that's what we're talking about. It needs to be at that level with Indy, I think.
But
it didn't feel like the people making this movie loved. Obviously, there must have been love for this project, but it didn't feel like they were dying to make this movie. Man, they had to make this movie.
Oh, I think Ford was.
No, it felt like they made it because of a fucking spreadsheet or something.
I think Ford was absolutely 100%.
Oh yeah. Sorry, that is a good
keyed
point.
into this. I mean, I think as we kind of alluded to earlier, I think he's the reason this movie exists.
Yeah,
essentially,
right. Mm-hmm. And he is the best thing about it.
Agreed.
He is, and it's interesting. Yeah. I think his performance here is excellent.
Yeah, me too. I think he's better.
I mean, I think it's one of his best performances. I don't love the way this movie presents the character of Indiana Jones, but I like the way he plays it.
Yeah, this is the meat of it, right? Can we? This is where we really should be talking about the idea that you're going to introduce him as a sad 80-year-old man with a dead son. That was an interest. Like, what do you guys make of that?
I agree that this is not really a character well suited to do an Unforgiven style, end of life kind of rumination on loss. But it's my favorite thing in the film. I think it's the stuff that is most exciting to me about it. I think it's why I like the movie, despite not having action or comedy that really, really gels like it should. That stuff is a wild swing. That stuff is, they didn't have to do that, but they're like, no, this is what we want to do. This is the film we want to make. And they did it. And I think, as Ford is engaged completely, and I think they're engaged in telling that story. And I love the last half hour of this. I think that's what this film has to recommend about it. Well, it makes it not as much of an Indiana Jones film. I think it makes it kind of a good movie on its own, in its own right, and an interesting movie that works in a different way than we're used to these working. That's my take.
Brett, what do you think?
I was trying to think of like, what could I compare this to that was not The Last Jedi? So I'm not going to go there. What's interesting to me is, Francis Ford Coppola talked about when he was making Godfather 3, or when he was thinking about making it, his intention was he didn't want to call it The Godfather Part 3 because that then would bring along certain baggage and certain expectations that he knew the story he wanted to tell was not going to satisfy.
Right.
And ultimately the studio said,
tough shit.
You're insane. We're calling this The Godfather Part 3. This feels like a movie with Indiana Jones in it. It does not feel like an Indiana Jones movie, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
I think it would if the action was better. And there's a little bit more pop to the dialogue. I think it would all work the way it's supposed to.
I think if you're still presenting Indy's character journey basically as is in this movie, he himself experiences so little joy or excitement or wonder throughout this that I think even with better action and more visceral, thrilling action, I would still be kind of sitting there thinking, I just really feel bad for Indy because he's so clearly miserable. And that was my overriding feeling watching this movie. It's like, I just want to give Indy a hug and let him know that like he means something to me, because nobody in this movie is saying anything like that to him. And it's
Sala.
Well, Helena
okay.
Antonio.
Helena is just dogging him the whole movie long, just constantly on his ass.
I get what they were going for. I think Ford plays it incredibly well. It just did not satisfy sort of what I'm looking for from Indiana Jones. And I think you could do a version of starting with Indy kind of displaced, kind of feeling lost in his own life, who then gets the mojo back. But the thing in this movie is he gets the mojo back like literally in the last 2 minutes of the movie. Like the climax has happened and he hasn't sort of gotten back to his old self. Like the ending of this movie, I'm talking like when we're back in the past, which is an incredible sequence that we should probably talk about.
We will.
You want to talk about big swings. Like that's a big swing.
Right.
The way that resolves on a character level for Indy, I felt was very unsatisfying because he was not given the opportunity to make a change for himself. Sort of a change was imposed upon him, and then we see the fallout for 5 minutes afterwards.
It's not the issue. The issue is not that Helena steals his agency or whatever by knocking him out. It's that Indy doesn't get there himself. We want to see Indy do it, right? We don't want to see him forced into it.
Especially as the payoff for this story, which is
right.
You're trying to. This is supposed to be a story about him sort of finding life again and sort of his spirit being rejuvenated again, and we do not see that until after the entire plot line of the movie has been resolved.
Yeah,
I have to,
and even then, it's still a little. It doesn't really feel like exuberant or joyful, really, because he's in a dingy apartment. He's like got bandages all over him. It didn't send me out of the theater on a high note. That's just what I'll say.
I'm assuming the reason for that is this is just a guess, wild guess, but the 4 writers thing, I think, is probably why that happened. If you squint, you can see what this story is supposed to be. It's supposed to be like It's a Wonderful Life, right?
Yes,
sure.
You go very, very low, miserable, so that you can wind it up and he can get the spirit of adventure back, and then by the end he's back and we're, oh my god, it's great, we're happy. And that's the point of bringing him low to begin with, is so that you can have that swing. But we don't really have the swing. You know what I mean?
I feel it's there. I feel like, Indy is grumpy the whole movie. I didn't get that feeling, really. I mean, Harrison Ford is inherently grumpy at 80 years old, but like, right. I don't know. I feel it's implicit and maybe not spelled out as much as it needed to be, but I kind of like that it's subtle. And I mean, and I don't even think it's that subtle, to be honest. I mean, Sala's little monologue there. What more do you really like? He is getting reignited with his passion in life. I mean, it's happening. That's why he sticks around for so long. It's why he doesn't break the dial. It's why he does everything he does in this movie, is because he's getting dragged, like just carried along with his emotions, and he is waking up. He's becoming who he used to be. And I mean, I feel that happening. They could have underlined it more, maybe.
But then how do you square what you just said with what is actually going on in that last scene in the past with Helena, where he is like literally crying and sort of begging her to let him stay in the past to die?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he's rejuvenated.
Well, here's my fix for the ending. My fix for the ending.
I've got one too, but
he's not
is it
dying.
fan fiction time?
Yeah, just why is he shot? Why is he dying? Why is this a suicidal ideation? Why is that what we're doing here? He just wants to stay in the past because he's just like, yes, this is what I've been missing.
History,
adventure,
great.
In history.
That's basically my fix for it too, which is like the energy in Last Crusade when he and Elsa find the knight's tomb in Venice.
Yeah,
and he sort of like becomes overwhelmed a bit with the excitement of, I'm seeing something incredible here, and I'm following in my father's footsteps, and he's like visibly excited about it. And I would try to have brought in that energy when he is seeing this battle that he has studied, and he's seeing these figures that he knows about, and these factions and stuff. He's actually seeing history. I would have him be sort of overwhelmed by it in an excited way.
He is
rather than overwhelmed by it. But he's crying, and he's like, I have nothing left to live for. There's nobody there for me in the future. It's like, I would get rid of all that kind of dialogue, and I would make it much more, this is like, I belong here because this is what I've spent my whole life studying, this sort of thing. And then you can have her try to trigger him realizing that, well, actually, no, history is happening. What they should have tried to do is tried to tie in the idea that he himself in the present is experiencing history.
Yeah.
He's experiencing, the moon landing is happening. Now the movie treats it as something sort of that.
No, I love that. That's so cool. Like he just doesn't give a shit about history happening right in front of him. That's great.
And then,
I love that.
Then you can use that to sort
Beatles.
of trigger that at the end, which is like, Indy, you're living through history in 1969.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is the thing. Like it's, I think these ideas are all present, and I think they're quite apparent in the film. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is an Indiana Jones movie. You can do some stuff for the cheap seats, and it probably won't make it worse. It might make it better. That I must agree with. Underline your points a bit and make a joke out of it too. That's
what it's Indiana. This ain't subtle. It's Indiana Jones, exactly, man. Yeah. I mean, I would have gone the different direction where Indy is. He's tempted to use the dial, just like classic Indiana Jones stuff. He used the dial to save Mutt or something like that, and then he gets talked out of it by Helena, who convinces him that you're living history now and all that stuff, and then the Nazi uses the dial and his face melts or whatever. The classic good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
tried and true.
Yeah, I mean that would have been the obvious thing to do here. The easy, that's like
obvious doesn't mean
no,
bad.
It doesn't. It's there's format stuff. There's things you expect out of a James Bond movie. Stuff like that.
Right.
He's going to use the Q invention he got at some point. All that sort of thing exists, and yeah, I mean I think that you're describing the better version maybe, but. It has its own tonality as a result of this stuff being implicit rather than explicit. It has this sort of, pirate looks at 40 kind of melancholy regret to it that is unique for this franchise. Like they played with the idea of old Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but mostly they just ignored it and made him a bitch more. That was kind of what that was. This one, he's actually an ancient man, and and he is dealing with loss. And what happens to people as they age? Things get taken away from you instead of given to you more and more. And he has this anger towards youth. And I think I know this sounds like, well, why would you want that for Indiana Jones? And I'm just like, well, maybe you don't, but they did it. They completely committed to it. And yeah, him bitching about the Beatles and hippies, that's good stuff, man. I'm very into that. And the moon landing. And I like, about Helena. I mean, I've heard a lot of takes that it's her movie. She's the main character. And I couldn't disagree more with that. I think, yes, she takes the reins, but that is about Indiana Jones. That's part of his arc. Is that
I understand why people say that. Mm-hmm. I understand why people think it feels like that, but it's not the case.
No, this movie is very much about Indiana Jones, maybe more than any of these. except Last Crusade. That one's more about him. But it has his arc firmly in mind the whole way through. And seeing this younger Avatar version of himself, who has been absent his guidance. And that was his job. He was the godfather. He was supposed to put her on the right path, and he failed there.
Is it his job, though?
Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why you do. That's what a godfather does.
How old is she in that flashback? She's got to be like, what, 18 almost?
Oh, I think 10. I thought 10 or 11.
Oh, is she?
I think so. She's a little kid. She gives him her, she brings him his hat and she's very sad that he's going away. She is looking up to him. He is failing her. What's going on? And yes, again, does this belong in an Indiana Jones movie? Maybe not, but it is what they did. and they executed it, I think, pretty well. Did, yes. I think they did what they were after pretty well.
My only issue with Helena is I think when we first meet her in the movie, like we're with her, she's with Indy for like 10, 15 minutes, and there is no hint of any of this animosity. So the audience is sort of getting acclimated to a version of the character that is a put on. Like she's trying to like coax Indy into giving her what she's looking for. And then she kind of throws him to the wolves and, runs away. And that's our first tip off that, this is actually sort of a morally suspect person.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that she's written in the movie is a little bit, it's not as fluid or as organic as I think it needed to be to really make that kind of a character work, who is going to spend most of the movie being angry at and sort of disparaging your leading character. No, I'm okay with that conceptually. I don't think she was written as well as she kind of needed to be to pull it off. I like Waller-Bridge's performance.
I mean, I think that character exists in every Indiana Jones movie to some extent. And this is not the worst version of it, I would say. That would be Mutt.
I don't know. I
don't know if I agree with that.
You like Mutt more than Hella? My goodness.
I don't mind Mutt. What's wrong with Mutt?
Shia LaBeouf plays him.
Well,
he's quite bad in it. He's actually. I think the character's okay. I think it's a very poor casting choice. That's my take on Mutt.
Sure, fair enough. You don't like his stupid face. I can't argue.
I mean, that's absolutely part of it, but I think he makes all the wrong choices for that role too.
Right.
And he just didn't have the persona I think that Spielberg wanted him to have. He just couldn't do the John Cusack, Tom Hanks, everyman thing.
Right.
It wasn't who he was.
What the hell was Mad's plan? What was he? What was he thinking was going to happen?
He was going to go and kill Hitler, and apparently not be killed in the process himself. And
he was going to kill Adolf Hitler.
Yes,
like it was nothing.
Yeah,
correct.
And then he was going to
take over the Third Reich.
Yeah,
and
as you do,
prosecute World War II more efficiently and effectively, and win.
Yep, that's the plan.
Okay. And in other words,
it's ambitious.
Not be a crazy weirdo like Adolf Hitler who wouldn't listen to his generals and whatever.
Yeah, he stays out of Russia probably is the main thing.
Yes, does not go to war with the Soviet Union.
I mean, yeah, it's a Nazi plot in an Indiana Jones movie,
right? Yeah, whatever.
I don't know if it's
don't think about it.
The most logistically sound plan, but I mean, it makes sense.
I like it. I like
do in pulp adventures about time travel and Nazis. And here's the thing I love in this film: the bad guys. I think they kick ass. I think they're really good. I think Mads is wonderful. I love his take on this. I mean, I feel like people are always surprised when he underplays stuff, and I'm just like, no, that's what he does. That's his whole.
That's
thing.
The whole point.
Yeah.
That's why you cast him.
Yes, and
because he's great at it.
He's super fun in this. That scene he has with the black waiter. Sort of his reintroduction scene.
Excellent.
Is an excellent villain scene.
Yeah.
It's one of the best villain scenes of the franchise, I think.
I would agree. Mm-hmm.
How are you enjoying your victory?
Oh, yeah. I think Boyd Holbrook as his henchman is really good, too. I didn't expect that when I saw him in the trailer. I was like, oh.
I wish he got more of a comeuppance, because it's sort of just like, he just died in the plane crash.
Yeah, he could have fallen out the bay door or something like that, or gotten shot with an arrow through the side of the plane, anything.
Some faceless goons get impaled. Mm-hmm. And it's like, why don't you give a little bit more of a spectacular death to your primary henchman in the movie?
Yeah, and Mads can do the plane crash death just alone in the cockpit. I think that's even stronger.
Yeah, push in on his shocked face and
just like, oh, I failed, and boom,
he's fantastic in the whole last section. Both the build up when when they're going to fly through the rift, and then when they go through and he thinks everything's gone to plan. Mm-hmm. And he's like he wants to share it with Indy, like how excited he is.
Oh man,
like it's and then when he realizes like how they've screwed everything up, just his horror that like he says, I can't stay here. Mm-hmm. It's really, really well done.
Yeah, after this controlled performance for 2 hours to see him just freak out, it's great. It's really fun. Yeah.
I can't stop laughing at, I failed. It's his final the delivery of that. Oh, I would have loved that.
I think he says it with his face. That's what you hire Mads for.
Can I just say, I hate when I see this so much with these movies, is the indie movies can't have such and such people. Like, you can't have aliens in India. The first movie ended with literal like ghosts flying around and then Old Testament God melted Nazis. Okay. Mm-hmm. So don't fucking like ancient Aztec aliens are plausible compared to that. So time travel's no different.
Interdimensional beings, please.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, that really seemed to, that was a complaint about that movie. I was like, I don't understand that one at all.
Aztec aliens are a perfect fit. They make tons of sense.
But I mean, that's exactly the sort of thing that you would, but anyway. And it's the 50s, like George Lucas really wanted it to be about aliens because 50s had alien movies,
Right.
And that's fine. Dial of Destiny, just as good. I think this is a fine MacGuffin. It looks cool. It does cool things. I like that it is not magic, that it is scientific. And as such, there's no portentous glowing light or anything. It just kind of clicks into place and works as a machine would. I think that's cool.
Yeah. Sure, it's scientific with quotes. Sure, it's not magic. I'll go with that.
Because rifts in time appear in the sky all over the place.
How does that? Do they just appear just without the dial? They just
giant
appear.
Storm clouds.
Yes, that is.
So we haven't found them yet. They just we need the dial to know where they are. Otherwise,
yeah, they have short windows of being open.
Okay,
which I guess Archimedes
last one was open pretty long.
How would he have known?
Well, he was just a genius.
He looked up at the sky. He said, "What the fuck is that up there? You see that portal-looking thing?
It must be a rift in time."
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
One thing I've seen about this movie, every single person I've talked to, without fail, has all agreed on this point. Everybody. Nobody disagrees. I'd be interested to see if you two did. Mads got decapitated early in this movie. Mm-hmm. And it was a weird beat.
Hey, whatever. I knew he's coming back.
I mean, his entire skull
he didn't have a scar.
You can't give him like a cool, like milky bisected eye or something. I think he had a scar technically.
He had
understated one.
He had fake teeth, but I mean, I feel like if you're going to do that, probably give him a big prosthetic. I mean, that seems like the point of that. Otherwise, you could just have him fall off the train and it'd be fine.
Exactly. The thing that's weird about it is it's such an obvious choice to have him be knocked off the train with such sort of ridiculous force. It's clearly a lethal blow.
So a lot of people were thinking, okay, is he supernatural? Did he do something with the No, it's just kind of a...
He's certainly aged less than Indiana Jones as well.
It'd be interesting if there was like a Frankenstein effect kind of going on there. He's in Germany. It's sort of adjacent to where Frankenstein was set. He's resuscitated by some kind of a mad scientist. Like, see now, if they were ever going to do like an Indiana Jones, another sort of horror tinged one, that could have been kind of fun. Like mad scientist types in Bavaria. Like I would have watched that movie.
He met Dracula. Why not?
He did.
Yeah, a couple times, right? This is something I mean, like, if we're gonna have 5 movies with Harrison Ford, and he's gonna play it at 80 years old, and it's gonna be adventurer's sunset kind of storyline, I'm moderately happy with how they did it. But I've always thought these movies should have recast, and he should be 30 to 40 years old eternally. And, they just keep telling stories that aren't specifically related to the last one. And it's all just like a Bond movie, It seems perfectly built for that. And I think they left money on the table by not doing that, unfortunately.
Brett, was it you who suggested that the third act should have been Indy in the temple, like using his knowledge of all the traps and stuff to take out the bad guys.
Yes.
Somebody suggested that. That's a great idea. Because
not necessarily the third act, but like I always thought, like, okay, so you're dealing with Harrison Ford's age, and you have to be realistic about it, but you still want an Indiana Jones who is proactive and who can, be taking out goons.
Right.
So it seemed to me
he can't get in a slugfight anymore. He can't.
Right.
It's just not possible.
So if you go back and if you look at like the opening of Raiders, as he's going through that temple, he's never been in there, but he sort of knows what to look for. He sort of knows like the hallmarks of booby traps. So it seemed to me like, okay, well, you have him lure some goons into a crypt or a cave or a temple or whatever, and you have him figuring out how to trigger these booby traps to take all these goons out for him. It seemed like that'd be like a no-brainer way where you can still keep Indy active. You can still have him be doing sort of heroic stuff and inflicting violence on, faceless henchmen, which we love to see, without making it so implausible that this 80-year-old is kicking ass.
It would have been fun if he really only came back to life and
when he murders.
When he murders. I missed this, Indy! Remember murdering Nazis?
I did really love Indiana Jones's hate of Nazis. Like, you should have stayed out of Poland. He had some good lines.
That was a good line.
Yeah.
I do wish this movie was a little funnier, actually.
Yeah.
My favorite.
He had some good ones.
My favorite of his is, I think, it's when they're going into the rift, and he's just, I don't know where we're going, but it's sure not 1939.
Yeah. Or when he tells Mads, your face rings a bell.
Oh, that's good.
That was a good one.
Yeah, he had good lines. I think the rest of the movie needed some. Well, it needed a bit more good dialogue for Helena, and it needed it needed comedy within the action. I think this is something I've always liked in indie films, that there is a sort of a joke set up to the staging of the action scenes. I mean, Last Crusade is like nothing but this, but they all have some of it. And there's like none of that in this. It's fun to see a guy get taken out by bamboo sticks or something, but I wanted more comedy, like the henchman with the random old man henchman with the broken leg. Yeah, like I kind of thought what we were going to have there was like he keeps showing up with another limb broken, and that's almost like too silly for this movie, but it didn't have to be. That could have fit in here. It would have been fit in Last Crusade.
Then we see him at the end of the movie, and it's like it's a mad world. He's just in like a full body cast.
Yeah. In the crashing plane. Yeah, something like that.
It's an example I've brought up a couple times, but there's a beat where it's just before the tuk-tuk chase begins, where the cops show up and they're going to arrest Indy, and then Indy goes, "Hey guys, just calm down," and then the cops put their guns down and go away, and all of a sudden behind Indy drives up a car. And these guys get out, and then we realize, these are gangsters. That's why the cops went. It's just kind of awkward. And
the timing is all off there.
Yeah, the timing of what should have happened is you see in the same frame, Indy goes, hey, calm down. And behind him, these mean-looking gangsters with weapons show up. And it becomes very obvious what's happening. So the visual comedy would... I think maybe Mangold isn't a comedy guy, or
no, not really.
Yeah, he struggled really a few times with that type of thing. Yeah. It's just not which is maybe why it's not as funny as the other movies.
Probably. I mean, Crystal Skull has a few absolute.
Oh, there's some clunkers in there.
Clunker moment. Oh, kid, looks like you brought a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there's clunkers in Crystal Skull, but
God, I hate Crystal Skull. Fuck that movie. I hate that movie. I know you were saying nice things about it earlier. I had to bite my lip so hard.
I hate Mutt. Look, there's things that are bad in that movie that I now like through having seen it a number of times. Stuff.
Yeah, there's things that are unequivocally good in that movie, though. The motorcycle chase is great.
There's good stuff.
That's a better action scene than any of the action in Dial of Destiny, I think. I mean, listen,
it's a mild,
it at least gets points for actually looking like it was actually photographed.
Yeah, it's not completely CG the whole way through. That's a good. It's definitely.
I would say that. Can we agree that the CGI action scenes in Skull are worse than the CGI action scenes in Dial of Destiny? They are worse.
Yes,
right? In terms of the quality.
That jungle
yes.
scene, my goodness, that jungle scene.
The jungle chase is brutal.
I think that actually is probably what kills the film. That sequence.
That's supposed to be the tent pole of the movie, and
it's
it just
supposed
sucks.
to be the tank chase, and it sucks.
What's a real shame about that scene is you can see that there are shots where it actually looks great, like where they were actually on some location, and it looks terrific. And then there are other shots
splattered CG plants over it.
Here's giant CG vines. Here's CG stalks that are, hitting Shia LaBeouf in the nuts. It's like, first of all, that's just a bad idea for a gag to put in the middle of this action scene. But second of all, you couldn't have found some way to do that for real either.
Hit Shia LaBeouf in the nuts. Yeah. Everyone wants to see this.
Yeah. Yes. He would have been up for it. He's getting paid. Come on.
Yeah.
That
probably would have been his favorite part.
The CGI in Dial of Destiny is not low quality. Like it's very well done for 2020's blockbuster CGI.
Industry standard, I guess.
My issue is just that I wish, and who knows how much they were filming this still during COVID restrictions and all this stuff. I'm sure that played a role to some extent, but I just wish some of these sequences looked like there was actually more that was done for real. And even if there was some stuff that was done for real, either the color timing or whatever other kind of processing is done to it, a lot of the stuff still looks like it's sort of heavily digital to me. Doesn't mean it's bad, just means it's not necessarily to my taste of what I want from these movies, where even in the original 3 films, people will say, well, but they were using cutting edge effects techniques in the 80s. Well, of course they were.
It's all practical, though.
They were actually photographing real things that existed. And that makes a big difference to me.
And it has set the visual palette for the series too,
right? Which
is distinct. These movies look distinct, especially the first 3 have a very clear aesthetic that is it's Spielberg 80s, but like through a filter of 1940s serials. They are impeccable looking films. 4 is a bad looking film, and I think Dial is closer to those first 3, but it's still the modernity of the CGI gets in the way. I will admit, the action scenes in particular, I'm aware I'm not looking at something real in the same way that I'm aware I am looking at, an actual stunt go down on the tank battle scene, like maybe there's a lot of trickery there, I'm sure, but I'm still watching Connery get pulled along a metal tread and Harrison Ford whip his foot to stop his progression.
And even when there's trickery in those movies, it's charming to know that, because you're able to sort of piece together how they must have pulled it off.
Yeah, all the matte paintings are great to look at. Yeah,
you're realizing all these techniques that they were pulling together, that they were marrying together to pull these sequences off, whereas now you're just saying, well, it's just CGI. It's just digital animation, which is, yes, that's not fully fair, and that's selling, the artistry required to do that today short, but I can't sit here and say that I don't feel that sometimes and feel like CGI is the lazy way out, and I would rather see something that looks more convincingly realistic. Like last year, Top Gun Maverick, there's CGI all over that movie, I'm sure. There are very few points where I'm watching that movie and I feel like I'm seeing something that is evidently fake.
Is this because we're old surly people like Indiana Jones who, don't like how youth culture is headed? And would young people be like, oh no, Dial of Destiny looks way better than those old films? I can't imagine that, but I'm maybe.
I hope not.
I hope not. Yeah.
But again, Top Gun Maverick's big selling point, and like a lot of the Mission Impossible movies, is look at how much we're doing for real, and those movies do very well. True. So
that's a fine point. And yeah, obviously, I think we all wish this had more practical effects in the action scenes. Maybe that would have pushed them across a little bit more. I also wanted better staging.
Speaking of whipping Connery's leg on that tank there, not a lot of whip in this movie. I think I remember 2 times he uses it.
That's true.
I think twice.
He uses it on the train, and he uses it at the auction, but I can't think of anything else.
I think he uses it to climb at one point, maybe in the tomb.
Does he?
Maybe.
That was a nice moment where Harrison Ford's like, I'm fucking 80. Leave me alone. I'm climbing a wall and I'm 80.
I did appreciate that he specifically mentioned having had the blood of Kali.
Oh, yeah. He called back a few things.
Yeah, it's like nice. Bitching about it. It's like, I never had the blood of Kali. I had voodoo torture.
Your bones are sawdust because you punched Nazis for 50 years.
So I don't know. How do you think this movie ages for you? How do you think going forward? Are you ever going to think about Dial of Destiny again?
Sure.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna pick this up and own the 4K disc and watch it periodically. I think I will.
Absolutely.
Well, I kind of really want to see it again now. Actually, I own the other 4, sure.
I do definitely want to see it again because I think there's something to the fact that I was so sort of taken aback by Indy's characterization and how long that was sort of persisting through the movie that it sort of colored the entire movie for me in a way. And maybe I wasn't able to pick up on some of the lighter moments that I know are in there, or maybe they didn't land for me quite how they should have because I was so sort of struck by what Indy was going through. So I do genuinely want to see it again, sort of now being a little bit prepared for what I'm getting into. And I may like it, a little bit more than I did.
How about you, David?
I saw this twice. I saw it yesterday because I knew I was doing this, and I figured I should have as many fresh thoughts in my head as I could.
Yeah.
My reaction was mostly the same.
Okay.
When I went into it the first time, my expectations were very low because of the review cycle and
poorly managed
Crystal Skull, and I wanted low expectations so they could exceed them, and it did. When I walked out, I was like, hey, that was competent, which is a nice change of pace.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, the second time I watched it is probably going to be enough for quite a while. Like I said, 6 or 7 out of 10, it's fine. But if I go to watch something Indiana Jones, why wouldn't I watch one of the first 3 long before this?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, if I want to watch an Indiana Jones movie, I probably will watch one of those 3.
I'll probably watch Raiders. I'll watch Raiders, and then I'll go, hey, Temple of Doom's right there. And I'll watch that, and then I'll watch Last Crusade, and then I'll say, hey, Raiders was pretty good, and then I'll watch that again.
But I could see this being a movie I watch when I'm like feeling like a movie about being sad and
depression,
aging and losing
when you're shirtless and asleep in the living room. You're like,
and there's a place for those movies. There's Logan, the other James Mangold Unforgiven movie. There's Unforgiven, I think this is a more successful. It's not really a legacy sequel, actually. Because it's so much about him, but I mean, I think there's a place for this, and I think I'm gonna come back to it, and maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe I'll be like, oh man, maybe I was wrong about that one. It's bad, but I don't think so. I think it's unique enough and different enough that it'll have its own identity, at least.
It's not gonna be a scar on the kingdom. It's not gonna have that reputation.
No.
And there's intentionality, but behind all these choices, like this is the movie they wanted to make, clearly.
Yeah.
And I think I respect it, even if, it's not what I would have designed for myself, for an Indiana Jones movie. And listen, we got to see Harrison Ford play this character one more time. And I don't think that's anything that we can just sort of brush aside lightly. Like, I'm glad I got the chance to see him as Indiana Jones again.
And he's the guy, he's the guy who makes this film work, really. He's, for me anyway, it is a great Harrison Ford performance, one of his better ones in the role, and it's a thrill to see that.
Would either of you go to the theater to see a Helena Shaw feature film?
Yes, I would, actually. I would go see that movie. They're not going to make it.
You're lying.
No,
I wouldn't rule it out.
No, this is a genre I love, and they don't make movies like this very often.
Oh, okay.
For me, it would be contingent upon who else is in it, what's the plot, who's directing it. I didn't dislike Phoebe Waller-Bridge as this character. Again, I wish the character was written a little bit better for me. I'd be open to it. It's never going to happen. They're not going to do that.
No, not after this week.
I still think, doing a short round show on Disney Plus, what is short round up to in the 60s could really work. I think it's a slightly limited audience for that, but I'd be in that audience if they wanted to do that.
Indie animated show, man. Just do it already.
The indie animated show is a good idea. That's probably the way to go, honestly. If you're not, they're not going to touch this IP directly for a while, but that they can do.
That's cheap enough that they can throw it on Disney Plus and get
Was it you who was talking to me about this? And you can kind of just set it in classic era. You can bring back Sala and Marion and Short Round, any character you want.
Yeah, this was my idea that I came up with myself that nobody else has thought of probably in the world. No, but yeah, I really liked that because there's some. I think it's a fan animation or something out there that's really. I'm sure you all saw it, but. Yep. I'm like, yeah, just make that a series and go have little half-an-hour adventures and everyone like Indiana Jones meets Cthulhu or something. Yeah, that'd be great.
I agree. They should do that if they're going to do anything. Or we'll wait 10 years and they'll recast it with a Britishman and that'll be, probably not a hit. I don't know.
They'll make a movie that's like Sony's Uncharted, where they cast like a baby who's completely miscast. And
have you guys seen the Uncharted movie? It'll make you respect Dial of Destiny quite a bit more. Yeah, it's.
I sat that one out.
Oh,
it's fine. Yeah. It's fine. It's not terrible. Would you say it's terrible?
I'd say it's bad. I would say.
Are you a big fan of the games?
I've played 2 of them, and they're good, and I keep meaning to get around to them. They're fun, but it is kind of just a shooting gallery for a while, and I think that's what's kept me from.
Yeah. I would, if you haven't played the 4th one, I would encourage you to try that one because it definitely tones that down and varies up the gameplay a lot.
I mean, it's weird that it's hard to just do Indiana Jones style adventure movies. Like it seems like you could just rip that off fairly easily. And the closest anyone's come is Uncharted, and that's a video game.
That's pretty depressing,
right? Like you can rip this off. I guess National Treasure was a successful-ish attempt at it. None of those movies are.
If you want to go back a ways, The Rocketeer. I'm a big fan of The Rocketeer.
I've been meaning to rewatch that actually and see how it holds up.
The Phantom with Billy Zane. Smash Evil.
I kind of like The Phantom too, but it's not a good movie. It's
Joe. If you're looking for a director for this movie, Joe Johnston would have been a good choice.
Is he still working?
I don't know. He did the first Avenger, which was awesome, and then he.
Anything since then?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't.
Maybe
think
he got kidnapped or something.
But I don't know if a journeyman is. I don't know. It's freighted with importance, like the franchise, and I think by keeping Ford in the role and only doing these every 15 years for the last little while, it's become important that you pull out all the stops and you can't just have the man with the golden gun, where they just have a journeyman director and they just kind of let's just get another one out there. And I think again, they would have been well served by that if they had.
That's kind of what this was, wasn't it? A little bit. No offense to Mangold, calling him a journeyman is maybe
he's one step above.
Auteur adjacent. Yeah, he has a resume that has a sort of a texture to it now.
Well, he made a journeyman Indiana Jones movie, so congrats to him.
Harsh.
Fair enough.
Harsh, but in my opinion, accurate.
It may be accurate.
Yeah. I'm bummed out, man. I wanted this to be good. And it kind of was.
It kind of is.
Not enough to excite me, no. Not enough to get me going.
Well, fair enough. I mean, look, it's not my film of the year, I wanted this to be exceptional, but maybe that's the secret upside of those cons reviews, which is that nobody went into this hoping it would be exceptional. Like you came in being like, I hope it's not shitty. Yeah, well, it works sometimes, Yeah. And again, I do think this has enough unique stuff going on that I will appreciate it and come back to it. And there's things here, I'm not mad, which is great.
All right. Did we do it?
We did it. We did it. Yeah.
We did the thing.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining me. I wanted to kind of talk this out a little. I've been thinking about this movie since I saw it, and I just wanted to be like, let's say some things. And and Al is fundamentally opposed to it, so I'm glad you could join me for this. And thank you all for listening. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny in theaters right now. Go see it or not.
Al is banging on the door saying, "Turn down the Beatles."
Yep.
Sorry, Sports.